Hey, we're rolling.
Mm-hmm.
It's behind the scenes on podcast night.
That's right.
Are you ready?
I am.
And
Si, I am ready.
Alejandro is ready. Oh, I think Alejandro's stalking us.
Yeah.
I am happy because Pastor Dale is not here. It's a joyous day.
Oh, shut up, Alejandro.
After he made you food.
Didn't make him food.
He called me a wine holder.
Inside joke.
Yeah.
But we've not actually been drinking, so there you
No.
go. And we welcome to if you're just joining us on YouTube, welcome to the State of the Ozarks channel. And we have way too much fun.
Yep.
You can also follow the anyway podcast. Welcome to Setup. Are we ready to roll? Welcome to the State of the Ozarks podcast. This is Josh Heston, Editor-in-Chief.
And this is Ethan Grubaugh.
And we're talking about our Ozarks.
Your community.
And this episode of Been Thinking About has been brought to you by
Stafford's Barbershop and Shave Company. The place for men.
And that happens to be in downtown Branson. And Shepherd the Musical, Rediscovering America's Story.
As well as Taney County Health Department, creating opportunities for healthy lives in our community.
That's right, and we appreciate those guys.
Yes, we do.
All of those guys. And of course we've had Dr. Head with Shepherd the Musical on. We're going to get Josh Stafford
cool.
in here pretty soon.
Okay.
When he's back
Yeah.
from vacation.
Yeah.
And vacation. And we'll get him back in here and have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we've got some, we're not going to dig into it tonight, but we've got some cool stuff coming with the Taney County Health Department.
Yeah.
So
excited about that.
I am too. So we'll get an awesome representative from Taney County Health Department in to talk about things going on. And in the meantime, we've got issue 580.
Yeah.
580 weeks I've been doing this.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. I'm very proud. I'm very excited. And so we got some cool stuff. And you had a chance. Of course, we shot the video, sort of the primer video for this last night on Facebook. But you hadn't read all the articles.
I thumbed through them both.
But now you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about sacred spaces,
Mm-hmm.
which was, of course, my editorial was inspired by the two articles.
Oh, okay.
That's where that came from. And then we've got Weaver Brothers Elviry, which I don't think you knew about.
No, I had no idea about the one of the characters, that Abner or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember there was an old radio show my grandma would play on a cassette. I don't think it's the same one, but the name Abner.
Kind of rung a bell. Well, and it was a spoof name.
Mm-hmm.
And Weaver Brothers Elviry was a really, really successful vaudeville show.
Explain vaudeville exactly.
Well, you know Branson.
Yeah.
So vaudeville goes back, of course, a long time, but essentially it is a traveling variety show.
Okay.
It is really what it was, and this was in the era before TV, before radio. So you did not have a lot of entertainment,
right?
Outside of course, live entertainment. That's what you had. You either read books, newspapers, or you went to a vaudeville show if you had the opportunity to do so. And of course, this was also developed in the era before movies.
Yeah.
You had you still had theaters, but the theaters were for live productions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking at the great show houses of the 19th century as circuits, and there were multiple circuits with varying levels of performance artists on those circuits. And so you would look, and what I think is interesting, and this really hits home for us being in Branson with so much live entertainment.
So much.
Well, and it is. I mean, there's a buttload of entertainment in this town, and you've got so much so. And I think it's going to be interesting for us to talk about this because you grew up here, and I know that a lot of people who grew up here were like, "Okay, I'm ready to get out." In that feeling that when you're when you're on the back side of this world, it's really doesn't feel all that special. in many cases, and yet you're bringing, you know, the economy of the town is based on people coming in.
Yeah.
And as you well know, because you're part of frontline retail.
Yeah.
In your day job when you're not Facebook famous, Ethan, and and you have this situation of live entertainment. So one of the things that I'm really proud of with this article with Weaver Brothers Elviry is we published their script. That's the bulk of the article.
Oh.
That is, I also have to do a big shout out to the Ralph Foster Museum on the campus of College of the Ozarks. In 2011, in March of 2011, they pulled all of their Weaver Brothers Elviry material out of the archives, put it in a room, and let me play. Let me go over everything that they had. And that's where the photos came from. That's where, and more specifically, to my knowledge, this is the first time that this script has seen the light of day since probably 1938, is it being published now on State of the Ozarks. Because it was original document that I got copies of, again, with permission from the Ralph Foster Museum. And it goes through every song, it goes through every performance, and it goes through every joke.
Oh dear.
And when I was going over this, I was just blown away because there's so much, it's funny. It is seriously funny. And for people who are not familiar with this, they had a full orchestra. They had a full pit orchestra that traveled with them. And this, as a touring company and as a performance show, they traveled not only all across the United States, but they did tours in Europe. And Weaver Brothers and Elviry were three individuals, two brothers and an Elviry, June Weaver, who grew up in Christian County and became performers that during the 1920s and the 1930s, they were known throughout all of the Western world as household names.
Oh, wow.
As performance artists. And they performed as hillbillies. Which that
sounds familiar.
Doesn't it, though? They performed as hillbillies. They told crazy, stupid jokes.
Yeah.
They dressed up as hillbillies.
Imagine that.
I know. But bear in mind, this is the 1920s.
Yeah. So stuff that I'm used to seeing
all the time.
Everywhere.
All the time. And and then, again, full pit orchestra, lots of side performers who would come out and sing pop songs. They would sing country music songs. They would participate in the comedy. They had dancing girls. They had the entire thing. And they were ultimately able to parlay this into film. And there are Weaver Brothers and Elviry movies from, I believe, the 1930s, certainly the 1940s. Oh, wow. The later portion of their career. I want to get my hands on at least a couple of these to see what they're like. But this show, and of course there were other vaudeville shows as well, but this show was seminal in developing the mindset of a successful variety country music, comedy, hillbilly show, which would also, I believe would inspire Ozarks Jubilee, which we'll talk about later. Mm-hmm. But the Ozarks Jubilee was in Springfield in the 1950s. At a very interesting point, there was a point when Ozarks Jubilee was a TV show that had much of this same structure. And during its run, it was beating out WSN and the Grand Ole Opry. Oh. There was a point in the 1950s that if the fates had directed a little bit differently, Springfield would have been Nashville.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course that didn't happen. But for individuals who grew up listening to 1960s and 1970s country music, some of the greatest names, starting with Porter Wagner, some of the greatest names in country music had their debut in Springfield. And
I did not know that.
Yes. And one of the things that, from my understanding, one of the things that made things different, that shifted the focus, was that Nashville was very good at developing music recording labels. and Springfield did not follow suit. So there was a transition of Ozarks Jubilee artists, including Porter Wagner, and who transitioned ultimately to Nashville in the 60s and the 70s, and then of course country music blew from there as an American art form. So but Weaver Brothers Elviry had to have had an impact on that show structure. Also, that transition with the Ozarks Jubilee, and when the Ozarks Jubilee went out of business, essentially, there was a transition to start performing nearby, and that nearby was Branson.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of crossover. One of the, and his name escapes me right at the moment, one of the set builders for the Ozarks Jubilee became one of the first architect designers for Silver Dollar City.
Really?
In the day. So there's a lot of really unique crossover. And of course now we're getting into Weaver Brothers Elviry ultimately influencing the Mabe family with the development of the Baldknobbers. And the Mabe family is from Christian County.
Yeah.
As Miss Catherine likes to remind us. Consider
a lot.
And
but I mean, you can't blame her.
No, and for people who are listening, Ethan and I go to the same church, which is the church you grew up in.
Yeah.
Smyrna Baptist Church, in rural Christian County, and the church has been there since 1874.
And Miss Catherine's been there almost as long.
Miss Catherine is 102.
Yeah.
and her sons grew up playing with the many of the Mabe family.
Yeah, they're plentiful around here.
Yeah. and then of course the Mabes inspired the Baldknobbers. Also were, I think, there's some inspiration there with the Presleys.
Yeah.
Foggy River Boys, Plummer family with Randy Plummer, and certainly then, and also Grand Country. So and I think in each one of those to varying degrees that are still going. Presley's, Branson's famous Baldknobbers, which have moved, and then of course Grand Country are all sharing in that legacy. So this is a legacy that dates back well before the 20th century, one that was ultimately refined by Weaver Brothers Elviry, that was given to America on national TV in the 1950s by the Ozarks Jubilee in Springfield, and it's still going, and yet a lot of people don't even necessarily, they even if they fall in love with the style, they would not necessarily know that this is an incredible legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in this area, and like we mentioned earlier, a lot of people that live here or grow up here don't care.
Yeah.
I'll put it bluntly.
Yeah.
The shows pay our bills.
Right.
And pretty much the only way you see one is if you work for one.
Right. Which you and I both done.
Yeah.
In very different shows.
Mm-hmm. Or, a family member works for one and you can get in for free.
Yeah. It's a very different world than the world that the tourists see.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I mean, and I think I don't blame folks for having that perspective. But one of the things, and I also don't want to be like all googly-eyed about, oh my gosh, we're living among stars. Because so many of the people who do work in this, and work on stage, it's a job.
Yeah, really
they're
is.
Brilliantly talented, but it's a job. And certainly a misconception that I think takes place in many cases, that the people who are not familiar with the Branson dynamic come in and they see these incredibly talented people on stage, and they think, since they're on stage and they're so incredibly talented, that they're probably making millions and they live in a mansion somewhere, and most don't.
No.
I think it's amazing that people are able to make a pretty good living to a degree, but the very, very few incredibly talented Branson entertainers are terribly wealthy. Pretty much just like the rest of us aren't terribly wealthy, but that's okay.
Right.
Welcome to the Ozarks. It is hard to make a living out of a pile of rocks.
Yeah.
And it always has been, and that's probably not going to change, which is okay. I think that's where character is developed in that regard, that it's not easy. And along with that is something that I think is really important, especially for State of the Ozarks, especially as we go forward, #Hillbilly Broadway, that these shows represent not only a legacy, but they represent an art form. And it's one that I want to really start digging into, because it's not Branson and the Ozarks. Branson and the Ozarks are not just any place USA. The Ozarks are very unique. It is a very unique fusion of culture in America. It is an incredible work ethic. Some very, very hardworking people. Some very dark stuff. And some very amazing stuff. And certainly that's what drew me. So with that, transitioning over to and so if you guys are listening or watching, read the article. It's great. Comment on it. We've already got comments on there. I'm excited.
Cool.
And now we're talking about Riverside Inn. That was the other big article.
Yeah. And that one I was a little more familiar with, even though I'd never actually been there.
Yes.
I had seen it several times.
Right.
Before they...
Because it's over by the... It was over by the Finley River. Mm-hmm. For those people who don't know, of course, the Riverside Inn was a restaurant north of Ozark, Missouri, on the Finley River.
Yeah.
And it's also tie-in, but with Smyrna Baptist Church. With Smyrna Baptist Church, we have, in order to get to Smyrna Baptist Church from Ozark, you would have to drive by the Riverside Inn. Mm-hmm. So you pretty much grew up going past there.
You'd see it on the other side of the hayfield.
Yes, yes. So this
tells you how rural this place is.
Very, very much so. And right next to the Riverside Bridge, which is getting moved, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that why the...
Well, it's been closed for quite a while because it's not safe, but it's moving downriver a little bit, and will be preserved.
Cool.
That's the official news at this moment, so I'm quite happy about that. Mm-hmm. So you didn't actually get to go there. I only got to eat at the Riverside Inn once, and I got to go twice to photograph it. The food was amazing. The article includes a detailed description of what I had to eat, and it is so good. But give me your impression from having looked at the photos and that kind of thing, and read some of the article. Give me your impressions on this.
You couldn't really compare it to another restaurant.
No.
Really? Because there's just all kinds of stuff, like paintings and, but at the same time, it's a nice restaurant. Like I saw the picture of the table set up. It looks like they put effort into presentation, both on the table and on the walls. Yes.
And so, of course, if you guys read the article, you can scope all this out, but I love digging into this. And the Riverside Inn was the inspiration for the editorial Sacred Spaces. Mm-hmm. That sacred spaces, of course, we anticipate a sacred space when we go to church.
Right.
For many Christians, that regardless of our denomination or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there was, and I took the photos in 2010 on this particular article, and I got to revisit them as we were getting the article ready for publication for this Sunday, and the thing that really struck me about this was it was such a sacred space, and that's hard to explain. But there was such an amazing energy in the space. The walls covered with artwork, the way it was all put together. Howard Garrison, who was a Ozark, Missouri native, owned the Riverside Inn and created it. And it was created over a period of time. And as he got more money, he would build more pieces to it. And so architecture did not really line up, and there was odd rooms that would jut off in weird directions, and staircases that would lead who knows where. And it was a very, very unique experience, and a weird floor plan. And he was also an artist, and so he would paint big paintings in canvas and behind glass and put those on the walls. But he would also paint the walls. And we've got some pictures on there. We're going to do another article soon with more pictures because I took a lot of pictures.
Okay.
But there was a cement block fireplace just plain old cement blocks, making the fireplace. And then he had whitewashed it, in the pictures on the article, he had whitewashed it, and then painted watermelons. Up and down.
Is that what
yes.
The fireplace?
Watermelon fireplace. There was a Greek Minoan room with all of these Minoan frescoes, or recreations of Minoan frescoes, or Cretan artwork. There was a section that was all Tsarist Russian artwork styles with these winter scenes and an alcove that had all this winter Russian stylistic paintings in it, and then a section that just had pear trees. The one of the other, going down the main hall, you went into a section that was all done in a French Parisian style. And he painted all of this on his own. He also, during Prohibition, during the 1930s, a portion of the Riverside Inn was a speakeasy. And he got thrown in jail in Ava for his speakeasy. He referenced it one of the best vacations he'd ever had.
Yeah, and it's kind of
sad. But while he was there, he painted he did a painting of the jail at Ava, and then when he got out of jail, hung the painting on the wall at the Riverside Inn to apparently celebrate being in jail. And then I think went back to operating the speakeasy. The speakeasy, when I was there, had been there was just an innocuous door off of one of the halls that you went through. And then when I was there, by the time I was there, a portion of that had been turned into a greenhouse. Oh, really? Yeah. So and then he took lots of plaster and would sculpt flowers on the ceiling and then paint them.
All right.
That one of the scenes that you can see a portion of the chandelier. Well, it's a 3-dimensional fresco of flowers circling the chandelier.
Okay.
On the ceiling.
Wow.
Yeah, and so amazing. It was a landmark. It was on the National Historic Registry. It was also right next to the Finley River, and it would flood on a regular basis. Yeah. And ultimately, that's what led to its demise. It's no longer there. I'm still in shock that it got demolished, but I'm really, really glad that I got the photos. Yeah. So glad I got the photos, and of course the food was absolutely exquisite. The entree of choice was fried chicken, and it was from a recipe from the 1920s, and that's really what got it going. It was originally a little fried chicken hut on the side of the river that just continued to expand, and cheesecake, good wine, breadsticks, cheese. They had a cheese tray with like 3 different kinds of cheeses on it. Only place up to that point, I always thought I did not like chicken livers, but they did fried chicken livers with a barbecue sauce that was just absolutely fantastic, along with these julienne barbecued carrots. Meatballs, it was like you had stepped into an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. Is really what it was like, all the way down to like every inch of this place was like living inside an Ozarks version of an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, and that was the Riverside Inn, and of course it also was the inspiration for the recipe that we have this week, right? Which is moonlight cake, which is a homemade, made from scratch, really, really rich sponge cake. That recommends a caramel frosting, but I think any kind of frosting would do. It has a little bit of an almond base. So, yeah, that's what we've got, and I wish we could go back. Yeah, I wish I could have actually gone in. Yes. Well, you can go to the spot. The magnolia tree is still there.
Is that the one that like kind of hung over the door?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that magnolia tree is still there. Wow. Yeah, we can go walk around the magnolia tree. Actually, I could have a pretty good memory of the layout. So we could go over to the park and I could like walk you through where everything was. But it's all gravel and grass now, so but it was it was on the floodplain. Yeah. I don't envy anybody who had to clean up after the Finley River decided to come calling. But wow. But Rosie Joe's actually is supposed to have the fried chicken recipe.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I heard that just a couple months ago, so we can...
Of course, it's been a long time since I've been to Rosie Joe's. But
yeah, but hey, it's all good. So, to learn more, visit us on stateoftheozarks.net.
Sign up for State of the Ozarks weekly email.
Like State of the Ozarks on Facebook.
Follow @SotoMedia on Twitter.
Subscribe to Soto Media on YouTube.
And follow us on Instagram @StateOftheOzarks.
Thank you for listening to Been Thinking About, the State of the Ozarks podcast with Josh.
And Ethan.
And this is our Ozarks.
Your community.
Yay!
We did it. Oh yeah, we're still on camera.
And we're still on camera.
Don't you ever touch me again without my permission. But I will forgive you. My favorite fruit is barbecue livers as well, brother.
Goes nicely with crickets.
Yes.
Hello, Alejandro. We made it.
You can pet. You just have to ask me.
May I pet you, Alejandro?
No. See, I kid, see, pet me. Please. Here. Roll over so you can rub my belly, my soft tissue of skin underneath it. Comforting.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh, not there. Inappropriate.
Bad touch. Bad touch, Alejandro. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're done.
Okay.